right. Well, hello. And for those of you here or in the internet, then as we say in Estonia, tere. Hello. Well, before I start, actually, it's always good to know the audience a bit. So how many of you have actually been ever to Estonia? All right. Yeah, we'll go, Kevin. Well, to all the others, well, don't worry. I'll try to exactly take you on a small tour with my little talk here and offer some glimpses about how we do things digitally there in the wider society, but also especially in the government, and so exactly in the Govtech mode. But I'll start by just a brief context, then where we are and who we are. So, tiny country, 1.3 million people only. Well, we were just talking about the numbers of, for example, ID users in India. Well, quite a few less of us. But out there up in Northern Europe and exactly gone through a very fast transformation of the whole economy, the whole country, the whole government in the last 25 years since restoring independence. And actually tech has been a very prevalent part of that. So what we have done and what we have sort of where we have got to by this point is that all the things you need to get done in your daily life, especially all the things that you need to get done with your government of ours, you can get done digitally. So, I mean, we heard some great examples from Norway just on the stage here, exactly the same with us. So whether it's how you park on the street, you do that with a mobile, how you check up your kids and their progress in school, again, you can get that done digitally, to everything else that need to get handled. So basically the only things we haven't digitized are the things that we consider high risk, where you still have to show up in person and because we want to make sure you really know what you're doing. So these are really the examples here. So buying a property or getting married, both very high risk cases, right? So everything else you can handle digitally from a distance and exactly more convenient and efficiently thus. But as I offered to give you glimpses, then what else is there? A key part, a key focus of any transformation, and especially digitization, has been reducing the red tape, the bureaucracy for companies. Any company has to deal quite a lot with the government, all the way from how you set up one, how do you get your licenses, how do you then handle your taxes, your statistical reporting, your annual reporting, whatever like that. Again, in Estonian case, you can do that online. If you set up a company, you go online, you spend a few minutes, and actually maximum in a few hours it's up and legally running. You can start doing contracts, you're in business, basically. And again, after that, all the rest of it, you can do, and by the way, you have to do online. So, for example, all the reporting, all the sort of tax sort of duties you have, you are mandated to do that online as a company, as an entrepreneur. So exactly, no paper version out for you there anymore. But the whole point has been, like I said, reduce the red tape. And this is actually one of the reasons that has contributed quite a bit to buzzing up the startup scene in Estonia, because it's just so easy to set up and run your company there. And I'll speak more about this in quite soon. The other thing, well, it's not just companies. Of course, we also have to look out and we want to make things better for the average citizen. So exactly all the cases, all those situations where you come across the public sector where you don't want to, but you have to, like, for example, when you get sick. Again, we could make this much more easier and efficient and convenient for you. So that is why we have a nationwide health record. Each time I go to see a doctor, they can access my full medical history, as well as sort of, exactly, with the hope that they don't have to redo as many analyses. They don't have to spend so much time unnecessarily for treating me. They can just focus on the things that they need to do in addition to what's been done before. Or digital prescriptions. So whenever I need to get a medication from a pharmacy, I don't have to go to a doctor just to get the paper slip for that. If it's a chronic condition, my family practitioner knows me, they can issue me the prescription digitally. I just go to the pharmacy with my ID and get the medicine. I save time for the trip. I don't have the convenience of sitting in a queue, in a line, in a doctor's office, just to get a paper slip that I can buy some medicine I need. So again, things like these. School-wise, I already mentioned that a big part what we have done, we have tried to digitize the interaction that schools, parents, and children themselves have. So whether the kids, whether they look up their homework, whether it's the parents who monitor how the kid is doing in school with the grades, all can happen in what we call e-school environment. These days, of course, the most attention we put to is how to really transform the delivery of teaching, aided by then digital content and materials like that. But it goes even to the hardcore areas of government. So, for example, when it comes to security affairs. So in our case, even the simplest things have brought quite a bit of a difference. So the simple thing I have in mind, for example, is that about 10 years ago, or more now, we did something at the time that was considered shocking. Today we think it's sort of silly and simple. We brought internet access to all the police patrols. So in real time, a police car, a policeman or woman on the street could check up from live databases, okay, what is, for example, what's the number plate, what's the background of this car, what's the background of the person. Immediately, in just a few months, we had a very sharp increase in stolen cars that were now being found. People that have been missing or being looked after for being found. So just having information at the fingertips on the streets made such a big difference. These days we use tech, for example, even more by, let's say, for example, when you call a emergency service, we can look you up based on your telecom records. So if you don't know where you are out there in the wild woods, well, we can sort of position you very sort of precisely, and still the assistance can get to you. So tiny things like these add up that in the end we can provide much safer country for everybody. And it goes all the way to the things that are really sort of the heart of what a country is, or what the heart of a democracy even is. So we have tried to also use the best of tech to try to bring governance and sort of being engaged in government closer to people. The ultimate example that we have is that in Estonia you can vote online for a local council, parliament, or even in a referendum. So, for example, we had last parliamentary voting elections we had 2 years ago, and about a third, 32% of the votes came in from 130 or so countries of the world, wherever our citizens happened to be at the time. So the whole point here is that, so again, voting is something that people ideally would want to do. As a government, we would like them to do. So we might as well make it convenient for them. And exactly like my example show that people from 130 countries participated online in the voting. Well, these days, folks are not stuck in one place. So if we really wanted to keep them engaged, we might as well offer them a chance to be engaged even from a distance. All of these things, doing stuff digitally enables, but our core reason why really focusing strongly on digital has been that we need to be very efficient. As a small country, again repeating, 1.3 million people, but we want to be a fully fledged country with, again, sort of a welfare matching up to what our Nordic neighbors are having, a full-fledged defense, the whole spiel in a way. So in a small country, and at the time, the economic policy is that we don't tax high. So how do you pull that off? Well, by being as efficient as you can, by all ways you can. And that is exactly why we started relying on technology from early on, because we needed to use every tool we had to bring this efficiency on board in public sector, but also into daily lives and daily business in the whole country. And we have really seen the benefits that tech can bring. I mean, I brought some examples in my previous slides and mentions already, but I mean, it goes even way beyond that. For example, digital signatures, the ability that we can sign any document and any application, any contract, anything digitally, I'll speak more about that. That means that alone brings us a work week saved for every working person each year. But a work week is basically what we use to produce 2% of GDP, if you average it out across the year. So just by having the ability to sign stuff in a digital way means that we are 2% of GDP worth more efficient. And that's massive, if you think about the growth rates we're having in Europe, for example. So many, many examples we could bring, but yes, the efficiency has been the driver part and still is, because we think that we have only, let's say, scratched the surface when it comes to making the most of tech in this direction. I'll speak a few words about, what else has happened? I'll speak a few words about an additional benefit, because that really relates to the main theme of today and the whole conference. So another outcome we have clearly seen has been that besides the efficiency gain, we also get a growth gain, a growth dividend. So this is because the way we've been building up our digital government, the way we are building up our systems and services, we have always worked with private sector partners, so we always outsource. There's two reasons for that. One of them is that, well, we cannot really afford good, again, good programmers and computer science guys on our government payroll. Secondly, but that's been more of a principal case, is that we always thought that perhaps if we then give them good stuff to do, if they work for us, they gain competence that they can then take abroad to other sectors, to other countries. And well, that's how it has turned out. So these days, when we talk about the IT sector in Estonia, a big part of it actually is revolving around Govtech scene. And exactly for the reasons because they've been trying out building new things for us that now they're trying to take around the world, doing work in 60 or more countries all over the place. And besides that, the other growth dividend has been that, let's say, the whole tech scene that got booming from the Govtech part now has really strongly spilled over in the last 10 years or so to all different other verticals. So the Govtech really got going the whole startup, the whole entrepreneurial community that now is disrupting stuff from financials to logistics to agriculture and so forth by making the most of the tech there. So that's why you can see quite a few Estonians in Silicon Valley, London, and all the other areas. Mockingly, they're called Estonian mafia, not because they somehow shady, but exactly because they strongly stick together and they go long ways in exactly disrupting the industries around the world. So all the way from Skype onwards that Tim Draper this morning mentioned on the stage. I'll speak a few words about what have been the underpinnings really for all those different services and things we've done. And in a way, I want to focus on 3 elements or 4 elements. Some of them are technical. So our luck was, and in a way, if you look in hindsight, we could say brilliance, but it was really more luck at the time and the result of experimentation, that we managed to lay strong enabling building blocks for all different services to go digital in government and beyond. One of them is a digital ID. So one of the first things we did before any services really was that we started issuing a digital ID to all the citizens and residents of Estonia. I mean, initially it came in the form of a smart ID card, still comes because it also is my physical ID, but it then doubles also as my key to authenticate myself online, access any services online, as well as digitally sign, like I said before, any documents with my government, with my business partners, with my employees, and so forth. That digital signing is especially key part because without digital signatures, digitization can only go so far, especially when it comes to government, because at least when it comes to bureaucracy or making things legally solid, still we rely on signatures happening. Without the digital signature there, it means that at some point the services have to break down in a sense that some physical meeting or signing and delivery via courier still has to happen, which means the whole cycle of a transaction cannot actually be fully made digital. If there is a signing, like in Estonia, you don't have a limit. You can really fully transform the whole way any procedure works. Like I said before, digital signatures is really the reason why only for marriage and buying a real estate you have to show up. Because, again, technologically, we could even handle them online and with a digital signature. But still, we just want to, like I said, want to be sure you know what you're doing, that you're voluntarily going into this transaction. These days, Smart ID card is not the only digital ID token and option there. We also have an equivalent mobile ID based on a SIM card, and we are constantly working to basically upgrade those. So, but yes, digital ID is really then also not for government. I mean, based on the mobile ID and smart cards, even private companies are using this. So this is also my key to accessing my banking online, to my key even as accessing, for example, my movie theater online. So this is an infrastructure that has enabled also then the private sector to digitize. It's more like exactly a national building block for all of them. The other one, and the very core one, has been that we built up a joint, a shared platform for data exchange across the whole government early on. And this was because we quite quickly found out that, look, everybody needs to integrate somehow, pull data, push data to be effective in their work. So what X-Road does, and this is our platform, how it's called, X-Road is basically, if you wish, a standard API setting that everybody mandatorily has to follow. So all different government agencies, when they need to send data or receive data, that's the uniform way they have to link up with each other. More like a protocol, not a service bus or any type of, let's say, one single point of failure type of platform. Really a standard way of exchanging data in secure ways. Now, and what that has meant that now services for people can be fully seamless and integrated as well, happening through sort of one-stop shop type of contact, if not fully automatically. And I'll give you an example. So it was said before that, exactly in most of Nordics, you could declare your tax online. Same in Estonia. 96% of people do that, and they love it. And which is weird because people usually don't love paying taxes. But the point why they love it is that it's such a simple affair. Just like with a few other countries, you only have to review if something's wrong with the declaration. So a tax declaration, getting your taxes done as a physical person, for majority of people, is less than 3 minutes of an affair each year. No accountants, no bills, no cost, no hassle. You're done with the taxes so easily. The reason why it's this way is because we offer it pre-filled. Like I said, you only have to review the data. And we offer it pre-filled based on exactly pulling the data together over X road. We are able to integrate databases within government, but also beyond that with banks, with telcos, utilities, you name it, much easier, faster, if there's a uniform way for that. And that's really the power, again, of having a shared building block, or as these days it's called, basically platforms for government to use across the government. Besides that, all those platforms really also serve the purpose of security. So we have been very keen on security by design approach from early on, saying that, look, if we don't establish trust, then there's no way we can have the users. If we don't have the users, well, how can we run a digital government, right? So the trust and let's say the core classical components of trust, they are built on the same platforms. So for example, yes, confidentiality is how we provide with having a secure and mandatory ID out there. But it even goes all the way to trying to all the time work with novel ways how to ensure other components of the trust. For example, these days working on in a blockchain mode to provide the data integrity of health records and other records, just to make sure that exactly nobody tampers with them. But the whole point here is that so security is what we have to do on a daily basis in any organization, especially government. And again, relying on this early has allowed us, at least in Estonia, to go a bit further and faster than perhaps some others. And my last point of the elements of, let's say, or the foundations of our digital government, well, it's not just tech, and I think many of you know this anyway, but government is a complex machinery of all different legal clauses and organizational setup. So basically, the key to making a digital transformation of such a machinery work is actually getting those laws and getting those organizational structures to change. We have always seen that tech is the easy part. Tech is everywhere the same almost, right? But really, I mean, using that and applying that to change how we work as a government, that's the hard part. And for that, we can actually use law, not as a barrier as it usually is, but an enabling tool. So the few examples I have here, well, I spoke quite a bit about digital signatures. These would not work if we didn't have a clear law early on saying that a digital signature is equivalent to a physical handwritten one. A simple clause like that, basically a law of 3 paragraphs at the time, was necessary to push everybody to accept that. The law basically meant that no public sector agency, for example, could say no to a digitally signed document because it was equivalent, right? Or another principle we have enshrined in law called once only. Once only means, in short, that if a government department, any government department knows some data about me, the rest of the government should not ask again. That's again the reason why the tax declarations are so simple. As we know, because the employers declare your incomes and your taxes throughout the year, as we as a government hold this data, we cannot ask you again. We rather have to present it back to you, share between agencies, and thus make it easier for you to go through a transaction. So again, a powerful principle that has pushed us to exchange data, do it effectively, redesign and transform the services that you as a citizen then encounter. In the last part, I'll say a few words about what's next for us. I already hinted that we think that we have at best only scratched the surface. There's way more to do. And a few things that we're working on to highlight those. First of all, we are really have been focused on efficiency, and efficiency especially for transactions or interactions between government and people, government and companies. In this vein, the next stage that we see coming for us is that even though everything's available online these days, well, actually, we could automate ourselves away of the equation. Why does it have to be a transaction or interaction in the first place? So think about some use cases. I mean, pensions, that always puzzles me the most. We know when a person is eligible for a pension, when they are about to retire. You're 63 in Estonia, you can apply for a pension. 99% of people do. Why do you have to apply? We even know your bank record, for example, or your bank account details if you have paid the taxes, which again, almost everybody does. So, simple thing we could easily automate away by clicking a few dots and redesigning how we think what issuing a pension means as a service. Or another example, and this is, let's say, a pilot that we are now building on up first, around really events, packages of interactions. The first one we're building is for companies, and we call it zero bureaucracy. So basically, if companies are okay, if they consent us to having access to the financial data, we make a pact that never ever you would have to submit any declaration or report to the government again. The reason why we ask for those is because we want to need some data, for example, to check up that you're legit, you're not in bankruptcy, and so forth. If we automatically have the data, we should not ask again. So that's exactly what we're building up now, that yes, if companies consent, our tax office can then pull the data as necessary, and never ever you have to have any red tape with us. You don't even need an accountant if you're an SME, and for SMEs that's a big saving, right? So another example how we can really automate things, add a bit of analytics, be more effective at how we do things as a government, but at the same time radically bring efficiency for all those users out there that we need to serve as best as we can. The other thing, it doesn't have to stop there. We see all those steps of automating the government services as a build-up, what we call real-time economy, where all those services also in business-to-business fashion could be happening in real-time and automated sense. So for example, yes, if we transact for all those reports automatically for you, well, the same data could be available B2B. All those sort of invoices, different things that you could actually make machine readable, and thus the whole sort of financial chain happen in real-time automatic mode. The other thing that I'll very briefly mention, we do work a lot on cross-border, because again in Europe we are to have a single market where people, companies, capital flows across the borders, but actually that data is not flowing like that, and that is quite a barrier to how Europe can work together. So we are now integrating our infrastructures, our X-roads, our digital IDs across the borders, so that if people do move, if businesses move, the cross-border movement red tape would be smaller for them. Just like we exchange data domestically could happen across the borders. But the other part that I'll be ending with is that we also are trying to rethink how to make our services available, not just in cross-border collaboration, but just beyond the borders. That is why we launched e-residency. And e-residency means that anyone in the world can apply to get a digital ID that our government issues, and thereby have access to the services we provide as a government or our private sector companies and partners. So 19,000 e-residents out there, the key reason why they come, and 19,000, I mean, doesn't sound anything compared to on a global scale. For us, that's more babies we make in a year. And these are people who are immediately economically active, setting up new companies, creating jobs, bringing new business into the country, not 20 years down the line like babies do, at best. So that's why we started exactly that. We see a use case that entrepreneurs, freelancers, small micro entrepreneurs around the world, if they go cross-border, they don't want to deal with hassle. They don't have a lot of revenue to spend on the cost of going cross-border. So by offering our services for them digitally, opening up a digital service space for them, they can actually go around the world much faster and cheaper. And that brings them to actually use services in Estonia. So through that, basically what we're jokingly saying is that we are trying to innovate or invent country as a service model. That basically exactly you can be located wherever you are in the world and choose the country that offers you the best service package out there. Having said that, I want to thank you for the attention. I hope you got a small glimpse into what we do in Estonia. Always welcome to join us, come visit or become an e-resident. And the very last thing, in the sort of Govtech mode, we are very keen to work with Govtech startups and investors out there, exactly offering a sandbox, a playing ground for you guys to innovate on new things that could benefit our digital government, but also then could be available for the rest of the world. Thank you.